West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Facebook will be facing tough new scrutiny when a whistleblower who used to work inside the company testifies on Tuesday before a Senate subcommittee. The testimony comes after the whistleblower, who was revealed tonight to be Francis Haugen, leaked internal research documents to the Wall Street Journal. Now, the documents reportedly show that the social media giant knew its platforms were, quote, riddled with flaws that cause harm, often in ways only the company fully understands. The whistleblower spoke to CBS News in an interview that ran earlier tonight on 60 Minutes.
When we live in an information environment that is full of angry, hateful, polarizing content, it erodes our civic trust, it erodes our faith in each other, it erodes our ability to want to care for each other. The version of Facebook that exists today is tearing our societies apart and causing ethnic violence around the world.
Haugen's comments ring especially true in light of the January 6th riot at the Capitol that was in part planned on social media sites like Facebook. In response to our request for a comment, Facebook sent us the following statement. Every day, our teams have to balance protecting the right of billions of people to express themselves openly with the need to keep our platform a safe and positive place. We continue to make significant improvements to tackle the spread of misinformation and harmful content. To suggest we encourage bad content and do nothing is just not true. Joining me now is attorney Andrew Bakai. He's helping represent the Facebook whistleblower, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Talk to me a little bit about your client's decision to come forward as a whistleblower, why she's doing this now, and what she's alleging.
Well, first, thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor. First, I have to say that being a whistleblower is a very, very difficult thing to be. An individual like Francis doesn't do that, without thinking about doing it first and the impact that it has, not just on herself, but on others. So what I want to do is applaud her for her courage and her dedication in doing that. The reason why she came forward is because she wants individuals in a position of authority, Congress, the SEC, the federal government, regulators, to have information so that way they can make the best decisions possible as to how to best regulate Facebook.
Let's talk about the SEC for a moment and specifically what she's alleging in terms of the documents that she provided them. Can you shed more light specifically into the allegations, what laws may have been broken, or what specifically you as an attorney want the SEC to investigate?
Well, there's a number of things that were disclosed to the SEC. First, a series of documents that Francis had collected that was provided to the SEC as well as to Congress. And we also provided a series of disclosures articulating some of the underlying concerns. So, for example, we've probably seen in the Wall Street Journal's article about the cross-check program and some technical elements in terms of how they were running algorithms or allowing people who are in positions of who are high profile to effectively engage in behavior without any consequences. Okay, but then we also provided an explanation as to how those algorithms and how the system was being run that adversely impacted individuals personally, like teenagers and teen mental health. But we also discussed and described how the platform has impacted society as a whole, democracies, and in fact, as so far as having an impact on as to a genocide in Myanmar. So we're talking about some significant things that have been brought forward and brought to light about the information that the company knew, when it knew it, and the fact that they knew that there was an ability to mitigate these problems.
As you can imagine, the reaction from Facebook has been to try and do some damage control. They've been trying to get ahead of Tuesday's testimony. Let me play for you a clip from Nick Clegg. He's the company's vice president of global affairs on CNN, just from earlier today. Watch.
The assertion is that January the 6th can be explained because of social media. I just think that's ludicrous. The responsibility for the violence of January the 6th and the insurrection on that day lies squarely with the people who inflicted the violence and those who encouraged them, including then President Trump and candidly many other people elsewhere in the media. I think it would be too easy, surely, to suggest that with a tweak to an algorithm, somehow all the disfiguring polarization in US politics would suddenly evaporate. I think it absolves people of asking themselves the harder questions about the historical, cultural, social and economic reasons that have led to the politics that we have in the US today.
Do you or your client believe that Facebook had a role in January 6th? I mean, what is the allegation in relationship to Facebook's role in the way communication or organization was taking place around that insurrection?
Absolutely. This is a platform that has been used by individuals who are spreading misinformation and disinformation. We have foreign governments using the platform to stoke hatred and violence. But at the end of the day, it's about Facebook's underlying algorithms and how the system was set up. One of our disclosures establishes that Facebook actually prioritized the spread of things that are hateful because it got more clicks, because it's clickbait. And that's what people are attracted to. So positive stories, favorable stories were not spread as far and wide as disinformation because people can latch onto that. So to say that Facebook had no role in what ultimately led to whether it's January 6th or other events globally, again, I point to Myanmar, is a false statement. They had a role. They are the vehicle by which misinformation is spread globally.
And one final question to you, Andrew, and I'm sure you've heard this comparison, Facebook to big tobacco. It's something, again, that Nick Clegg categorically rejected there. You had Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey say that they are pushing a product that they know is harmful to the health of young people. Do you think, A, that is an appropriate comparison, and B, do you believe Facebook to be, or your client believes that Facebook to be, an overall harmful product to society?
So first, I do agree with that analogy. I do believe that what's coming out today is not dissimilar to what came about big tobacco years ago, where it was finally publicly disclosed that big tobacco knew that their products were harmful to the general public. Because of Francis's disclosures, we now know that Facebook knows that its product is harmful to teenagers, to society in general, to democracies, and to global health. That being said, unlike tobacco, if Facebook will continue to exist, or platforms like Facebook will continue to exist. So it's not that you can do away with tobacco with a tobacco analogy. We have to learn how to live with Facebook and regulate Facebook so that way we can mitigate it from becoming a more harmful product.
And you think Congress, you have a confidence that Congress can do that, given what we've seen from Congress so far in dealing with big tech?
Well, I think before they were listening to what big tech was telling them. Now they know what big tech knows. And the difference is they know what big tech knows, and what Congress should want now and should demand is full transparency. In fact, that is something that my client wants. My client wants Congress to be knowledgeable about what these companies can do, what they know,
right,
what tools are at their disposal to fix these problems. And I do believe that when Congress learns about this, starting on Tuesday and going forward, that perhaps we can have some meaningful conversations about how to fix these complex problems.
It is Monday, the 4th of October of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays because, well, was it a quiet weekend for you? Was it? Well, welcome aboard. We are here in the salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we put quite a menu together for you today. Indeed. Everybody wants to talk about Kristen Cinema hiding out in a toilet stall. And how the destruction of society is emblematic in people chasing her there. Well, I think what's more emblematic of the destruction of our society is ignoring one of the stories that we will be leading off with today, because we don't do that here at Netroots Radio generally, and West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy specifically. Yes, and you know what I'm talking about. We're talking about tens of thousands of people protesting in marches across over 660 towns and cities against the Texas anti-abortion law. Of course, I don't know, for some reason that wasn't that big of a story for anybody. Cable or regular old TV fare. I wonder why that is. We can only speculate. And then we got the Pandora Papers dropping. What, is this going to go the way of the Panama Papers? I want to know. Because I'd still like to know a little bit more about the Panama Papers, but the Pandora Papers, that's okay. Seems like a streaming service. The other seems like something you'd roll up and put it in your pipe. I don't know. If you're rolling it up, why would you put it in a pipe? Okay. It's Monday. So, and apparently the Pandora Papers will be, and are revealing quite a bit. And you can tell. You can tell how valid it is, how, well, we can pretty much be assured that the accusations of this ungodly wealth and where all these people are hiding it and what they're doing with it also, you can tell that it's pretty credible because of the reaction of the people named in it. Okay. They always show you what they're guilty of. Every time. God, it's like a detective show with Columbo. Just one more thing. Alrighty. So, what else? What else were we subjected to over the weekend? Subjected to. Well, we're back to the old days when people didn't have to worry about a pandemic, apparently, by how they packed them into these sporting events. Boy, I'm pretty scared of those kinds of... I don't want to hang out. I don't want to go to the state fair. I don't want to sit in a stadium. Jeez. I don't care if it's outside or not. Don't want to do it. I don't know. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm thinking that people are a little bit too cavalier about what's going on. Oh, boy. So, on that front, I suppose I should fill you in on my own personal agenda. Knock on wood now. Because this is an insidious virus. It almost has... You think it has volition. Because right when you think that you're doing pretty darn good, it kicks you in the butt again, and you feel like shit every time. So I've learned not to, come out and overtly tell everybody, oh yeah, I'm feeling pretty darn good. I think I'm on the mend, because as soon as you say that, this little virus that apparently has volition, yes, it can think and act on its own will. Doesn't like that, or maybe that's just part of its, program. As soon as that statement is made, you could get really sick or worse. And people have seen it happen too. He looks so good. I was just talking to him yesterday, and then I walked out the door and now he's dead. That's what happens. So you got to be careful with this thing. It's almost like it's from outer space. I wonder. Now, if it is from outer space, we brought it. Okay. Let's if we're going to be talking panspermia, we better make sure who's infecting what in the universe. Yes, I'm looking at us. My mom continues to be on the mend, getting stronger every day. It's still going to be a little bit of time before she comes back home, but we want her out of the care home. Look, it's not in the plan. Getting her strong enough to be able to come back home, that's one thing, but there's no indefinite about this. So anyway, she is getting a bit stronger, better than I anticipated, and so that is good. And we don't want her having a relapse of anything, or any of the comorbidities that one would have at 84 years old. So it's Monday. What a way to start off, huh? Well, I've already given you a bunch of stories already that we're going to be attending to, though I held off a bit on the Pandora Papers revelations because that's kind of like that should be leading the news. We'll see how it goes, but it may just go the way of the Panama Papers. Yep. Kind of like everybody forgot about those, and those were pretty revealing. Yeah, no wonder they shut them down so quick. Well, it's a little bit different now. Different administration in the expose now. Exposed for the world to see. Yes, redundancy is our craft here. Yeah, we do it. We pipe it in with little different kind of tips, so that the design looks a little different, but very, very nicely done, too. Steady hands. Okay, it's Monday. What's on the rest of the menu here? We're not going to go on a 20-minute rant of nothing, because there's so much more that we've curated for you today. We need order, at least on a Monday, to get us started. Well, on the rest of the menu, actually, at the top, that's a little, shall we say, an amuse-bouche of something to come specifically tomorrow. There'll be a hearing tomorrow with the Facebook whistleblower who was interviewed on 60 Minutes, I guess, as a what? Getting her testimony out there, so I don't know. Usually you give the testimony and then have the 60-minute interview. They do things differently now. I don't know why, but they do. Anyway, in the lead up to her testimony, the Senate subcommittee had a hearing, and that's where the whole Finsta imbroglio occurred, when we know that that's not really what was being asked, or because everybody knows what Finsta is. It's, fake accounts. Anyway, are you going to stop it? Oh, we don't do fake accounts. Well, are you going to stop it? We know you don't do it. Are you going to stop it? Well, Facebook was compared to big tobacco. And, yeah, they are. Is Facebook addictive? No, our Facebook is not addictive. No, I've never heard of that before. Yeah, the emails tell a different story. They always do. On the rest of the menu, as I mentioned, tens of thousands of women marched in over 660 towns and cities across the country against the Texas anti-abortion law. But all we heard was about Kristen being chased into a toilet stall. Oh, the horror. The mayor of Huntington Beach, California, called the large oil spill there an environmental catastrophe. And the Fed vice chair traded out of bond funds and into stocks on the eve of the Powell Pandemic Statement. You're not supposed to do that, but he did. After the break, we moved to the chef's table where Polish police confiscated the computer equipment of a journalist who has investigated the country's right-wing government. And so it begins. And fire destroyed part of the historic Iron Bridge spanning the Tiber River in Rome. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, right there by the social media scroll, is the chat room link. And the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. And she and Ricky are getting ready. She being Kelly and Ricky are getting ready for Netroots Nation 21. And yes, once again, Netroots Radio will be represented at Netroots Nation on whatever virtual media row they have. Will there ever be a media row again at Netroots Nation? There's been some question about that. We'll look into it. Anyway, we are there once again, and thank you, Kelly, and also Ricky, for taking care of our work that gets done every year at Netroots Nation. Look forward to interviews and all the other accoutrements that one experiences at Netroots Nation when you're not able to be there. Okay. Anyway, because you can't get everything, and we get some of it, and we bring it to you later on. And it's fun. Yes, indeed. Okay. If you would look across the page from the chat room link to the left near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, there is the link to our Patreon page. And we have that there because, well, look, we pay our bills, but we also need help paying our bills. And you have been a big help. And we make these appeals on a daily basis, at least Monday through Friday here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And the reason for it is because, look, everything's going up. The internet provider fee went up. I say this every week, but every week I look at the bills and it's like, oh my God, when is it going to end? Do I have to play this stupid game of moving things around from internet provider to data processing, whatever out there? No. I like things, in one place. So anyway, to bring you, this high fidelity powerhouse of resistance, it's not cheap. I'll just be honest with you, but we thank you for your generosity. Now, what people have done is that by being a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you could send us what you might spend, for instance, on an espresso-type coffee drink. That just comes to my mind so quick because, well, Blue Gallon Drift Glass brought it up. And it was a great metaphor, and say, why not? It makes sense. It does. So if you could send those funds our way once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars with what we already have on hand. A lot of it out of our own wallets. I'll just be perfectly honest there as well. And then we pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue resisting this idiotic. I got to tell you, it's not more than a right wing. We call it fascist Nazism. It's flip a coin. But it is a takeover of the United States of America and democracy itself, and we will not give up. They force us to go Wolverine on them. We'll go Wolverine on them. They're asking for it. They won't like it. Not one bit. So thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty, because we take it seriously with all the jocular and, attempts at humor here in this salon we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And Netroots Radio. Yeah. Speaking of which, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and a hell of a whole lot more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Cuz about 10 minutes before showtime, and then link that up on Twitter and other social media platforms too. Zuckerberg, you're going to get canceled. Yes, he pushed a little bit too far. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you could do so at CookbookWest. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. All righty. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of Reuters by Timothy Gardner and Richard Webner. Women marched by the thousands, tens of thousands, on Saturday on the Supreme Court, the Texas Capitol, and cities across the U.S. to protest increasing state restrictions on abortion and advocate for maintaining a constitutional right to the procedure. The 660 demonstrations around the United States were largely sparked by a Texas law that bans abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy, in other words, before anybody knows. The measure, which went into effect last month, is the most restrictive in the country. No matter where you live, no matter where you are, this moment is dark, Alexis McGill Johnson, president of Planned Parenthood, told the crowd at the rally for abortion justice in Washington, D.C. In the state capital of Austin, hundreds gathered in the sweltering heat to denounce the so-called heartbeat law signed by Governor Greg Abbott. It bans abortion after cardiac activity is detected in the embryo. And the state says usually around 6 weeks, but that's not cardiac activity. Please. And that is before most women know they're even pregnant, and earlier than 85 to 90% of all abortions carried out. The law relies on ordinary citizens to enforce the ban, which makes no exceptions for rape or incest, rewarding them at least $10,000 if they successfully sue anyone who helped provide an illegal abortion. Well, abortions aren't illegal. Some of the demonstrators said the law would backfire on legislatures. I think more people believe in the issue of providing safe abortions than our legislature realizes, said Andrea Roberts, age 49, an Austin preschool director. Abort Abbott appeared on several of the demonstrators' signs and T-shirts, while others sported the Texas state slogan, "Come and take it," next to a drawing of a uterus. Washington protesters marched to the U.S. Supreme Court 2 days before the court convenes for a session in which the justices will consider a Mississippi case that could enable them to overturn abortion rights established in the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade case. If the court overturns the precedent, and you know they are, since they've been out there on some sort of like PR tour, everybody hates us because they say we're partisan. We're not partisan hacks, no. And they're partisan hacks. If the court overturns the precedent, abortion access would no longer be protected by the Constitution, leaving states free to ban it, limit it, or allow it without restrictions. The justices, in a 5-4 decision on September 1st, already denied a request from abortion and women's health providers to block enforcement of the Texas law. It's cruel, and it's sure as hell not Christian, Kenya Martin of the nonprofit Abortion Care Network told several thousand Washington protesters. Under sunny skies, the demonstrators carried signs that said, "Bands off my body, think outside my box, and keep your rosaries off my ovaries." I like that. "We're heading in the wrong direction," said Katie Allen, a 67-year-old university researcher from Rochester, New York. "It's the tyranny of the minority." Well, we're supposed to have a separation of church and state. Just trying to convince anybody now about that. A rally in March in New York drew thousands of protesters, including actresses Amy Schumer and Jennifer Lawrence. Abortion rights advocates and the U.S. Justice Department have challenged the Texas law in state and federal courts, arguing that it violates Roe v. Wade. And a federal judge in Austin on Friday heard the Justice Department's request to block the law temporarily while its constitutionality is challenged. Blevins and Jonathan Allen, writing for Reuters, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. A large oil spill off the Southern California coast left fish dead, birds mired in petroleum, and wetlands contaminated in what local officials called an environmental catastrophe. The U.S. Coast Guard, heading a cleanup response involving federal, state, and city agencies, yesterday, Sunday, announced an around-the-clock investigation into how the spill occurred. An estimated 126,000 gallons, or 3,000 barrels, had spread into an oil slick covering about 13 square miles of the Pacific Ocean since it was first reported on Saturday morning. And that was at a news conference with Kim Carr, the mayor of Huntington Beach. She called the spill an environmental catastrophe and potential ecological disaster. The beachside city, about 40 miles south of Los Angeles, was bearing the brunt of the spill. Carr added, "Our wetlands are being degraded and portions of our coastline are now covered in oil." Oh, just like the good old days. The spill was caused by a breach connected to the Ellie oil rig and stretched from the Huntington Beach Pier down to Newport Beach, an area popular with surfers and sunbathers. Yes, it is. Now, when they say oil rigs, we made them camouflage them, so they look like little islands out there. But everybody knows they're oil rigs. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife ordered a fishery closure for coastal areas affected by the spill. The closure will extend from Huntington Beach to Dana Point for the coastal areas and will extend up to 6 miles off the coastal points for the offshore area, the department said late yesterday, Sunday. Carr said the oil rig was operated by Beta Offshore. Well, we want an Alpha one. Maybe that's the problem, huh? And, of course, they were a subsidiary of Houston-based Amplify Energy Corp. And calls to Beta and Amplify went unanswered because you know what was Sunday, after all? Everybody's at church, praying to God no one knows how much money they're making hand over fist, while at the same time destroying the earth that they're living on. Carr, in her remarks, added, "In the coming days and weeks, we challenge the responsible parties to do everything possible to rectify this environmental catastrophe." Amplify Energy CEO Martin Wilshire said at a press conference in Long Beach that the pipeline had been shut off and remaining oil suctioned out. He said divers were still trying to determine where and why the spill occurred. This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. Federal Reserve Vice Chair Richard Clarida traded between $1 million and $5 million out of a bond fund into stock funds one day before Chair Jerome Powell issued a statement indicating potential policy action due to the worsening of the COVID-19 pandemic, Bloomberg News reported. Clarida's trades were described in his 2020 financial disclosures, showing the shifting of funds out of a PIMCO bond fund on February 27th of 2020 and buying the PIMCO Stock Plus Fund and the iShares MSCI USA Min Vol Vector Exchange Traded Fund in similar dollar ranges on the same day. The next day, on February 28th of 2020, Powell released a statement that said, coronavirus poses evolving risks to economic activity. He added that the Fed was closely monitoring developments and their implications for the economic outlook. Vice Chair Clarida's financial disclosures for 2020 shows transactions that represent a pre-planned rebalancing to his accounts, similar to a rebalancing he did and reported in April of 2019. A Fed spokesman told Reuters, but they always say that. It was pre-planned. It was a blind trust pre-planned trade. Sure. The transactions were executed prior to his involvement in deliberations on the Federal Reserve actions to respond to the emergence of the coronavirus and not during a blackout period. The selected funds were chosen with the prior approval of the board's ethics official, the spokesperson added. The Bloomberg report comes as two other Federal Reserve officials came under scrutiny for investment trades they made last year, and they announced their retirements today. Well, that brings us to our break, and why don't we do that? And when we come back from the break, we, of course, will go through weather from around the world, and, of course, we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. They say it's darkest before the dawn, and that's just the way that sweat bees like it. These tropical insects, which live on an island in the middle of the Panama Canal, visit night-blooming flowers under cover of darkness. And a new study shows that the shapes made by gaps in the rainforest canopy help them find their way home. The work appears in the journal Current Biology.
Even though most bees are active in bright daylight, there are a few species that have become nocturnal due to competition and due to predators.
Eric Warrant, a professor of zoology at the University of Lund in Sweden.
This is particularly true of the warmer parts of the world, such as the steamy rainforests of Panama.
Warrant and his colleagues have been studying these night flyers, called Megalopta genalis, for more than 20 years.
We have discovered that, like all bees, Megalopta is able to learn visual landmarks around the nest and presumably also along the foraging route.
They use these landmarks to find their way through the vast forest and to recognize their nests. It's no easy feat, especially considering the size of these nocturnal navigators.
Exactly how they manage to do this with such tiny eyes and with such a small brain is still to a large extent a mystery.
But it seemed that the first step would be to simply look up.
There is one visual cue that is quite obvious in this otherwise profoundly dim environment, and these are the bright patches of night sky seen through gaps in the forest canopy directly above.
But did the bees raise their eyes while flying forward in the dark? To find out, the researchers got to messing with the Megalopta.
We placed the Megalopta nest, which is a hollowed-out stick, at a stand in the forest.
Sandra Scheib, a University of Lund doctoral student who worked on the project.
On both sides of the nest, we placed 2 additional mock nest sticks, which we had drilled holes in to resemble nests.
Above each nest, they placed a distinctive visual landmark, a single black bar to mark the real nest, and a pattern of stripes in different orientations above the fake nests.
The bee was allowed to forage for a few nights to get acquainted with the area.
And then one night, when the bee was away, Scheib would shuffle the landmarks. And when the busy bee got back,
she immediately entered the nest underneath the landmark she had learned,
which was one of the fakes.
Of course, after a few seconds, she realized her mistake and she came back out again.
But after a short flight to get reoriented, she would again make the same mistake. So it seems the bees were sneaking in a last look up before flying in the front door. And the same thing happened when the researchers used circles of different sizes to form more canopy-like patterns to mark the entrance to the nests.
She took a look at the pattern from underneath and flew directly into the mock nests.
The results were as clear as day, but there in the dark, they weren't exactly easy to see.
Even if we put a hand in front of our face, it's very difficult to see it.
Since it was totally dark, I used night goggles to monitor the nest.
And an infrared camera to film the bees' comings and goings, after sunset and before dawn.
Of course, it's not the most pleasant thing getting up in the middle of the night to set up the cameras. On the other hand, the rainforest is the most amazing place at that time, and many animals are the most active at this time.
Even the humble sweat bees, which will showcase their remarkable skills for anyone who's prepared to watch. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
He's running first, second, third. No! He stopped between third and home. What the heck?
Ooh, that's not the time to stop. And now's not the time to stop wearing a mask. Vaccines are a game changer. But the game's not over. Mask up until you're vaccinated. Let's finish strong. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/masks. A message by CDC and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to Abortion Vigilantism in Texas.
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
When a woman or girl is raped or is the victim of incest in Texas and becomes pregnant, she can't get an abortion because a Texas law, effective September 1st, prohibits any abortion after 6 weeks, a time when many women do not even know they're pregnant. No exceptions, not even for rape and incest. The law also makes it illegal for anyone to provide any kind of assistance to the woman considering an abortion. A father cannot counsel his daughter. A husband can't support his wife's decision, even after she was raped by a stranger. And then, The law allows any person, someone with absolutely no connection whatsoever to the person needing an abortion, to sue the woman and her dad, husband, sister, friend who gave her a ride to the clinic, and of course the abortion clinic itself, and receive a $10,000 award from them. $10,000! It's essentially a bounty program created by the state to hunt down women in need of medical care and those who would provide that care and support and help them. All this, notwithstanding the First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of speech and the constitutional guarantee of choice under Roe v. Wade, which this Texas law, as a practical matter, eviscerates in that state, which is, of course, its point. The legal challenges have begun.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
Exciting news from Wall Street. Our wealth markets are booming. Everything from the Dow Jones average to gold prices are rocketing to new records, showering us with wealth from above. Oh, wait, maybe you're one of the big majority of workaday Americans who don't own stocks or gold, so maybe you're not celebrating Wall Street's big boom. But just chill, because conventional corporate wisdom assures us that the wealthy will invest their good fortunes in enterprises that eventually will produce trickle-down gains for everyone. Excuse my rudeness, but let's take a peek at how those who are reaping today's big buck bonanza are actually investing that wealth. Look at Wall Streeters themselves. The big banks have been making money like bankers, with their stock prices zooming up by 28% just since January. So how are these moneyed elites spending this windfall? Not by making job-creating investments, but by simply giving the money to their big shareholders, including their own top executives, nearly all of whom are already among the richest people on Earth. The main way they do this is through a sleight of hand called a stock buyback. The honchos simply cash out the bulk of that 28% increase in the value of the bank's stock price, using that money to repurchase more of their bank's own stock from lesser shareholders. Hocus pocus, this manipulation artificially pumps up the value of the stock these insider shareholders already own, making each of them even richer than rich, although they've done absolutely nothing to earn this increased wealth. This is Jim Hightower saying, it's not a small scam. J.P. Morgan Chase is now sinking $30 billion into buying its own stock. Wells Fargo is shifting $18 billion into the scheme, and Bank of America is throwing $25 billion into its buyback. Wall Street bankers are the biggest robbers in America. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by our new Lowdown Happy Hour, now live streaming on Facebook from the Chat and Chew Cafe. With kick-ass political spark plugs like Beto O'Rourke, musical champions like Marcia Ball, and grassroots change makers like the New Georgia Project and People's Action, the Lowdown Happy Hour is reaching out to you to help put the move in movement. So grab a libation and join the fun. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the evening that a series of explosions began at the T.A. Gillespie Company near Morgan, New Jersey. The explosions would destroy the plant and 300 buildings and kill an estimated 100 people. The world was embroiled in World War I. The United States had entered the global conflict the year before. The nation's factories were churning out munitions and other supplies for the war effort. On that fateful evening at Gillespie, workers were loading shells at the sprawling complex of 700 buildings that covered more than 2,000 acres. The initial explosion was likely an accident. Regardless, the explosion was so severe that it cut water lines to that part of the plant. Without water pressure, firefighters struggled to douse the flames. A chain reaction of explosions touched off as the fire spread in the plant. Houses in the nearby town shook from the massive explosions. Windows exploded and residents fled. Residents from 3 towns were evacuated due to the disaster. The New York Sun described the exodus as, quote, streams of human misery, mothers and fathers, frightened children clutching still more frightened dogs. Old people tottering along with all the same dazed expressions on their faces, as if they scarcely realized what had happened. When the fire was finally put out, nearly half of the plant's buildings were destroyed. It was impossible to say exactly how many workers were killed, so bad was the carnage. 2 members of the U.S. Coast Guard died responding to the disaster. The disaster was then compounded when a flu epidemic swept through the residents evacuated from nearby towns. The death toll and misery from these tragic events mounted even higher.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of about 80 or so. Sunshine and clouds mix throughout the day, and the winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy this evening, then becoming cloudy after midnight with lows in the low 50s. Winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and then more clouds and sun tomorrow with a more than a slight chance of rain, expecting possibly something a little less than a quarter of an inch if we get hit, which would be nice, and highs will only get up around 72 to 74, so we'll see how that goes. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus. These are the end of Friday totals, so at the end of the show on Friday, we had lower totals than what we are seeing right now, and these totals may not be updated until after tomorrow's show, of course. So the confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon now stands at 218,018 people. And 281 have deceased, and that was a jump from the Thursday total to the Friday total. Ragweed pollen is rated moderate right outside the window here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 37 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is still moderate at 4. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.95 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that crowdsources from around the world. London is 62 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 65 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 82 degrees and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 60 degrees and fair. Kabul is 65 and clear. Hong Kong is 82 degrees and clear. Tokyo is 75 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and clear. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees and sunny. And New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Vanessa Guerra of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Police confiscated the computer equipment of a journalist working for a leading newspaper in Poland, which has carried out investigations of the country's right-wing government. The seizure of the equipment of the reporter for the liberal Gazeta Wyborcza newspaper took place on Saturday in Zielona Góra, a city in western Poland, which is about 280 miles from Warsaw. The raid and seizure of the equipment was done on orders from police in Warsaw. Roman Imileski, the paper's deputy editor, said the police incursion took place without a warrant and strikes against the fundamental right to journalistic secrecy in a democracy. He said in an article published on the paper's website on Saturday that the editors have no doubts that the police raid is to intimidate the journalists of the newspaper, citing other moves by the ruling authorities against independent media. Warsaw police said the reporter was not specifically targeted. It said that offensive messages containing threats that had been sent to Polish lawmakers or reported the threats to the police. The messages were then traced to an IP address that led to that of a little-known local journalist, and the reporter denied having sent any threatening letters. Meanwhile, the editors of the newspaper vowed to use all legal means to protect its journalists from harassment by authoritarian authorities.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. A blaze, possibly sparked by a gas canister explosion, destroyed part of an historic bridge spanning the Tiber River in Rome before firefighters extinguished the flames early yesterday, Sunday. Firefighters said the fire erupted before midnight on Saturday near the Ostiense neighborhood, and by 4 a.m. Sunday local time, they had completed their work. No one was injured in the fire that involved the Industry Bridge, but 3 nightclubs near the Riverside neighborhood, popular with young people, were evacuated as a precaution. The blaze appeared to have started in an area of shacks occupied by houseless people on the riverbanks near the Industry Bridge before spreading to the span itself, and authorities believe the fire might have been started by an explosion of a cooking gas canister by one of the houseless people. A section of the bridge's outer pedestrian walkway and stretch under the roadbed carrying utility lines broke off and fell into the Tiber River. Pope Pius IX attended the 1863 inauguration of the bridge, one of the last major construction works in Rome in the waning years of the papal state controlling the city, which would soon become the capital of unified Italy. Dubbed by Romans the Iron Bridge, the span originally served as a railway bridge. Later, it was outfitted to instead serve cars and foot traffic. A plaque near one of the span's ends pays tribute to 10 women who were executed on it in 1944 by German SS troops occupying Rome during the latter years of World War II. The women were punished for having occupied a bakery to feed their families in the city where war made food scarce. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.